Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes from halfway around the world talk everything green and gold. I'm Mike, and that's Iowa Joe, and today we're doing our this is the final show before the 2024 NFL draft, so we'll be going through our mock drafts ahead of it. Just a reminder, we will be doing a live stream of day 2 of the draft, be headed by me and Joe, if Joe can step in. I know he's going to have work that night, but we'll also have a bunch of guests who are going to hop on and carry that thing through the finish line of day 2. So it'll be a lot of fun. So join us if you have the chance. But yeah, Joe, setting up. I tweeted it last week where I was kind of like, it's felt like this offseason has dragged along for some reason. And I realized that it's because we're not waiting for a certain someone to emerge from the darkness and give a decision. I think that it's made this offseason feel the longest in about 5 years, basically. So how are you doing heading into this draft weekend?
Well, it's so boring this offseason that content creators are creating their own drama without having to have players do it for them. So, I mean, yeah, it's a lot different than the last couple of years that we've had to deal with. Like I said, there's been a lot of drama amongst content creators, so I guess that keeps us going for the moment. But, you know, it can't be over soon enough. Even though I love this time of year, it gets to the point where it drags on long enough that you just want to be done with it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
that's kind of the point we're at right now. So, yeah, that's where I'm sitting.
All right. So as we said, we've both done mock drafts. I'm almost certain we've done it very different ways from each other. So much so that Joe probably has something he could put up on the screen, and I don't mind. It's all just
No, I
no.
went. I tried to run through several different mock draft simulators just to see if that would be what I wanted to do, and they were so far-fetched that it didn't make sense to even try. So I just went through all the guys that I watched and guys that the Packers have brought in for top 30 visits and stuff like that, just to come up with my own draft. Like I texted Mike the other day, I ran through one simulator that I didn't plan on making any kind of trades, but the AI just kept popping up so many, can't turn down trades that I ended up with I think I want to say 16 overall draft picks for the 2024 draft. I ended up getting one team's complete picks, their whole draft for the next year for my first round pick. So if we would have been able to keep going year after year, I probably would have had 30 draft picks for the 2025 draft year. And it was so ridiculous that I was like, screw it. We're not going to do this. We're just going to go from what I know and from what I've seen from top 30s and from what I've seen other guys talk about. So that's what we're going through.
Right on. Yeah, it's funny that we both kind of come to that agreement that it's been a really weird simulator. I mean, and you can kind of just see it on some of the ones that people pop out where, no one knows exactly where anyone's going to go in this draft. It's all up to the 32 teams. But yeah, and you say it every year that a guy shouldn't be there that late and stuff like that. But it feels like the simulators just have a lot of guys falling for some for understandable reasons, guys who didn't test well. And then you have other guys where it's like, that guy's a really good football player and a lot of teams would like him. And you're kind of like, but there he is in round 5. And it's like, huh?
Well, I had Dallas Turner and one of them drop all the way to the Packers pick at 25. So, I mean, we've talked to several people who think he's probably going to go top 10. So, and that's why in our little chat group that we have, I had to ask what is the potential that we're seeing that he's going to go, just because if he was going to go too high, then that completely made my mock draft a non-start point. even though I have a good idea of what I was going to do with him, or even Chop Robinson if it came down to that in a draft. So yeah, it's weird.
Yep. But that's what, that's one of the great things about this weekend is it is the time of year where hope springs eternal for all 32 teams. You'll find fans from every fan base that believe that they are that magical one player away every year. Some a little bit more realistic and some a little bit more head in the clouds than others, Chicago Bear fans. But here we are, alas, on the doorstep. So, Joe, first round, let's just start it off. Where are you going with your first round pick?
Well, first, I think we should talk about potential that there is potential there this year that the Packers could trade,
Mm,
whether it's trade up, trade down, whatever. Their first round pick, it's all going to depend on who drops to them or who's sitting at the draft board. But there, with all the draft capital the Packers have, there is possibility that they can move up. We've talked about it kind of before. That there have kind of been whispers that maybe a move on from Christian Watson type trade could be there. That could be used to gain some more. Not saying he's the same type of player, but like a AJ Brown type deal, pick for player type thing. So yeah, there is real possibility that the Packers can move one way or the other. I think this year more than most, I could see them moving down more than up, but it's all going to depend on who's sitting at the draft board when they think they could realistically make a move.
yep. It's one of those years. I do think this is a draft where it's hard to say before it starts, but just based on what Green Bay's needs are and how this class looks, it feels like a class where if there's that right quarterback that's sitting there at 25, this would be a year that would make a lot of sense to trade back, pick up a couple like day 2 picks, maybe even a pick from next year, something similar. It'd be hard because we're not picking that high, but if you somehow get like the 2018 trade with New Orleans, maybe it's not a round 1 pick next year, maybe it's more of a round 2, but even to kind of do something like that, I could see Groot making that kind of move. I do think that because of where Green Bay is, yes, you do need some like immediate contributors, but there's a lot of spots on this roster. There's a bunch of spots on this roster that need breadth of depth more than like impact players kind of thing. Because I feel like there's just a few positions where it's like a guy is definitely going to start. Offensive tackle or offensive line being one. And even that's among like tackle, guard, center. That's among the positions really on offensive line. And linebacker is the other one where it's like, yeah, that guy is definitely going to start. Safety is a little bit murkier depending on, what they do with Rudy Ford, how good they feel about Anthony Johnson Jr. They obviously brought in Xavier McKinney. So I feel like linebacker and O-line are the two spots where it's like, yeah, someone drafted day 1 or day 2 has a really good shot of making an immediate impact on this year's roster. Otherwise, a lot of guys are going to be counted more on to be like first year contributors as rotational pieces, things like that, but not so as, and that's where it's like Green Bay has a lot of needs because I do think they need to reshuffle, due to upcoming free agency losses this year, cuts, like losing Bakhtiari and stuff like that. There's a bunch of spots on this roster that are, if you were to look at it on a chart, it's like roster spots 30 to 40 and down kind of thing. And, they just slot in at different positions. But that's where having more picks, day 2 and on can help you fill in a lot of those spots, because this is one of those kind of drafts where you hear it every year where it's like there are, we know who the clear top 20 is, let's say, and then there's a divide, and then there's a lot of guys who fit into the tier below that. And then it panics a lot of fans because they're like, oh my God, there's going to be, there's a bunch of reaches. And it's like that the draft is like that every year. There's a consensus top 20, top 25. It's honestly very rare that there are 32 or more players that everyone's like, yeah, these guys should all definitely be first round picks. Every player, outside of like Trevor Lawrence, even Trevor Lawrence had some like, is he really the best quarterback in this class kind of comments and stuff. So like that just goes to show like there's always going to be some, even Andrew Luck, it was like, does he throw too many interceptions kind of thing? Like there's always going to be an angle that people find where to poke holes in a prospect. So the main thing is that the Packers get guys who they feel like are going to fit into what they're trying to do as a team. And so that's where I think that you can see a trade back this year, because you do kind of like 2008, but this time get the picks right instead of only hitting on Jordy Nelson. So that's one of those. That's kind of the route I could see Gutekunst going. And honestly, I think it would be a pretty good move, set of moves to do, because those are the kind of, you're getting those still talented players, but guys that aren't necessarily expected to step in right away and be impact players. And I think that's where Green Bay's got to go this year.
Right. And like you said, linebacker, offensive line, and safety are the three big things that the Packers need. And there's no clear cut, in at least in my opinion. I've had this argument with everybody since the beginning of the draft season this year. I don't think where the Packers are picking at 25, there's a clear cut choice for offensive lineman, linebacker, or safety. And that also depends on where you're slotting some of these guys in. Cooper DeJean, I think, can play both corner and safety. Is he going to be there? Is somebody going to take him higher? Is he going to take a Josh Jackson like tumble where he's not going to fall far, but he's going to fall into the top part of the second round? I know everybody's on the Graham Barton thing. Okay, whatever. But I have a big issue when, oh, well, he might be able to play this spot, but he's probably going to play this spot and maybe play this spot. I don't like taking that as a first round pick, because there's too much guesswork with that. Can he play it? Maybe. Can he be a gadget like Zach Tom is? Maybe. But there's still those questions there. And we saw it kind of a little bit when the Packers took Bulaga back in 2010, where, oh, well, he's going to come in as a guard. Well, they put him in as guard and he sucked. He couldn't play the guard position, but because of injuries, they put him out at right tackle, and he ended up being the Packers' right tackle for many, many years, even though there was, injuries in there and whatever. But, he was a top right tackle for a long time. So you can't necessarily say, oh, yeah, he plays this position in college, but he's going to be able to immediately slot in at this other position. Because the big argument, and like I argue with Mafia all the time about the arm size thing or the arm length thing, that's not always an indicator. The Packers in the past have taken guys who have quote unquote shorter arms, who have had better careers than guys who have, typical arm length for those type of things. And that's the big thing about Bulaga, is he had the shorter arms. So everybody was like, oh, well, he's got to move into guard. There's no way he can play tackle in the league. He's got to move to guard. Again, he sucked at guard. He was a top level right tackle. Can Barton do that? Can what's the other big one that they've slotted in for the Packers? Well, I know they keep saying Guyton and Mims. I think Mims is completely off. I something that really bugs me about him is he's that big, but he opted out of testing 2 different times, and he was a healthy scratch for it. That concerns me. Guyton, I can't tell you enough about him to even say it.
Guyton is more believable, and because Oklahoma runs, they're way more wide open spread, but they do a lot more zone blocking stuff, whereas Mims is coming from a power scheme where and that's the thing, we never want to speak in absolutes because you never can predict the future.
Oh, I'm Sith. I'll speak in absolutes.
But there's a reason that the trends do hold overall, is because Green Bay has a way of operating. There's certain things they do tend to do. But like you said, even with the arm length thing, Bulaga made a joke about it at his retirement ceremony, where he said like he wanted to extend his thanks to the late Ted Thompson for breaking almost every one of Green Bay's tackle trends, because he was a guy with shorter arms, wasn't a great athlete kind of thing, maybe not super tall either and stuff, but like you said, like look what it turned out to be. So there's reasons that guys are gonna fall. And it's all about, do they have the requisite other traits to make up for a slightly shorter arm length? The one thing I will say about like a Barton is like his arms are they're shorter than Bulaga's were and stuff. And that does matter. And like you said, I don't know if he has the like special rest of his game to overcome that on the edge. And then the thing you worry about, like, and we discussed it in the O-line episode, but the thing you worry about is it's like, okay, this year it's, we get the reports out of training camp that, oh, it's like with Bulaga and Derek Sherrod, where it's like, we've moved him inside to guard, but it's not going so hot right now. And you never hear like, the light has come on in preseason week 2 kind of thing. And then it's like, he's never active the whole season. And then you fast forward to next offseason, it's like, well, now they're trying him at center because, Josh Myers is gone in free agency. But he's getting toasted by Devontae Wyatt in practice.
But do they move him into center? Because now the whole thing is now it's Zach Thomas probably going to slot it because who was it that reported that
Demovsky? It was Demovsky.
Yeah, they view him as a Pro Bowl right tackle, an All Pro or a
All Pro to Hall of Fame center or something. It was like a
Pro Bowl tackle. All Pro guard, but a Hall of Fame center.
Yeah, which I do think there is water to that, but my problem with it, and I've had some back and forth with people about it, like everyone just sees like the Hall of Fame center. That's great, but are you opening more leaks in the boat by moving that guy now? Like I said, I was fine with trying that out last offseason because you had what appeared at the time to be healthy, as healthy as he was going to be, Bakhtiari. You had Yosh Nijman under contract for another year. Rasheed Walker was in the wings. You didn't know what Walker was, but you had 3 other tackles that you're like, okay, like we've got something here. But this season, you have Walker and you have Tom as your 2 tackles on the roster who have NFL snaps. And that means a lot because if you move Tom to center, that means that, okay, and I guess, they did sign on Andre Dillard, but Dillard hasn't been a great offensive tackle. So it's like you're counting on Walker to be at bare minimum league average, above average, because you're expecting to be a contending team this year. You got to have better than league average. You're expecting Dillard to provide you with, as at bare minimum, he's got to be a guy who can start the season and give you above average play until some rookie can take the reins from him.
Well, now, before you go on with that, with the Dillard signing, I tweeted it, and it's got me really curious, and I even looked up what it would be if you took his RAS and plugged it in. I'm wondering if they're hoping they can do a reclamation project and make him a guard.
I wouldn't doubt it at all. Yeah.
Because if you take his RAS and plug it in as guard,
oh yeah,
one of the big names that it comped to, Josh Sitton. And if they can get another Josh Sitton off, out of a reclamation project, then
that's something they'd be all over. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I mean, I know everybody's viewing him as the swing tackle, but I'm thinking they're using him as a reclamation. I don't think Sean Ryan has done anything to win the guard spot. But before you go on with your thought, I kind of want to correct something. My thought with that is if they view Tom as, this Hall of Fame center, they're not going to draft Barton because they're going to be looking for a guy that's going to play tackle.
Yeah, exactly.
And if he can't play tackle in the league, then he does them no good because that means they have to still leave Zach Tom out at tackle,
right,
and let this guy play in guard or center. So you can go on with yours, but I just wanted to...
Oh, no. And basically, that's what I'm getting at, too, is like the time to make that move was last offseason where you had options at tackle. You had Runyon Jr. at right guard. So it's like you're only trying to answer the question at one tackle spot because you think you have Bakhtiari. You don't know that his knee is compromised again at that point. You have more answers to the test at that point that you have NFL film on. The one would be like, we haven't seen Tom play center in the NFL, but we've seen Yosh play right tackle. We obviously know what Bakhtiari can be at left tackle.
We did.
Yeah.
It wasn't for long, but he has played snaps at center.
You're right.
I want to say Runyon went, or not Runyon, Meyer went down.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. But yeah, whereas this year, it's like you said, not only do you have fewer answers to the tests because you cut Bakhtiari, Yoshi's in Carolina, Runyon is in New
Runyon's
York.
in, yeah.
Yeah. So not only do you have fewer answers to the test, but like you said, now you are pigeonholing yourself in, we've got to find tackles. And there are some guys who should be good tackles eventually, but now it's like these guys, whether it's a Dillard, Walker maintaining, really stepping up his play like he was ascending on the end of last year, plus a draft pick being immediate like answers to the test on day one, that's a lot of pressure to put on. And whereas, and I know people are like, oh, but they can improve on him. They could improve on Myers, but does moving Tom over create more issues? And that's the thing. Like I said, and that's my answer right now, because I don't know what they're gonna come out of this draft class
Right.
with.
We don't know what they're gonna do, but it just, when people sit there and want to argue about the Graham Barton type thing, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, that's great. But with this announcement or this thing that just came out about, Tom being this Hall of Fame center, and Barton can't, can't play tackle in the league, then what are you doing? You're drafting backup in the
in
first
the first
round?
round. Yeah. So no, totally agree with
So
you
yeah,
there.
it is what it is. But yeah, to go back to the point, I completely agree that this year feels like a better chance that the Packers move down more than anything. And if they can come out with the 2008 type haul for the 25th pick, get 2 extra seconds, and I think they got a extra, was it an
Fifth or
extra
something like that.
third?
Oh yeah, maybe it was the extra third, because I think
Because
it
I
was
think
all stuff they used for the Clay trade the next year or something. I forget exactly
well,
what
no,
it was.
I want to say Jermichael was one of the third rounds that.
Oh yeah. I think you're right.
So
So
I want to say that they ended up getting an extra third, and that ended up being Finley, but I'm not sure. It's, that's what, 14, 15, 16 years ago.
yeah, just a little bit. So yeah, it's been a hot minute, guys. But but
But
yeah, we'll see where the chips fall. Yeah, it remains to be seen, but Goot has options, and that's the main thing. Is like, and that's why too, like, it's kind of interesting that they, it's not Demavi's fault that someone in the org like said like, we have plans for Tom. Like, that's his job, is to report those kind of things. But it's kind of weird for that to come out before the draft. And not that all 31 teams are going to be like, well, Green Bay's looking for tackles because they think they want to move their right tackle to center. It could very well be Green Bay saying that to get a center that they want. Like, we're in the, to go back to the Star Wars, we're in the Jedi mind trick range, the ultimate Jedi mind trick range of the draft. This is where, like, the what's his face, the Texans tackle, obviously that was like the day of, but Tunsil and his weed mask, or what's his face, L. Collins and his potential murder case or whatever, that the year he was drafted and went undrafted. So or you hear like, oh, this guy can't learn a scheme, or this guy can't do this and that, and it all starts popping up, or this team wants to do this and then they do the opposite. And so who knows at this point? And like I said, that's why I'm not reading too much into anything the team says at this point until we see what they come out of the draft with, because they very well could take 3 tackles. And also, it doesn't count if they're all round 5 on kind of thing, because that's just depth filler. Or if they're, because that to me means that they're sticking with Walker and Tom, because they're just like, we just need depth, someone who's gonna potentially challenge Dillard for the swing tackle. Or if they come out with a center, there it's like, like they just wanted to make sure they got their center kind of thing and stuff. So
and I think a lot of people mistake what I'm saying is I don't think we need to take a first round offensive lineman.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't take him in the second. We can't take him in the third. I'm not saying we have to wait until the 5th, 6th, and 7th round to take offensive linemen. I just don't think they are first round worthy type guys.
Yeah.
But that's me. I don't work for an NFL team. I don't have inside sources. I don't have this stuff. I go with my 2 eyes, my thought process, the and I know this has been a dirty word for the last 2 weeks, but the thresholds that we've seen fit what the Packers do and what the players that potentially could be there, you know, fit into those thresholds.
Yep.
And I don't see it unless a Joe Alt or the kid from Penn State, and I'm not even going to turn
Fashanu. Yep. Fashanu.
Fashanu falls all the way to 25. And even if they do fall all the way to 25, you have to question why they're falling all the way to 25. But unless that happens, I just don't see anybody worth a first round pick at where the Packers are taking.
Yeah. And that's not to say, and we're going to go on and on and on about this, but that's not to say that the guy they take couldn't be a good first round pick. You know,
Right.
That's the magic of the draft. But
hell,
it's
I
one
was
of those
against I was against the Jordan Love pick. I was against the Rashawn Gary pick, and look how that turned out so far.
All right, well, that caps the podcast. If Joe doesn't like the first round pick, it's going to be a good player.
Well, no, I can't say that because I know I don't have the receipts anymore because it used to be on an old cell phone of mine. But I called the Bulaga pick. I called the Haha pick. And there was one other pick recently that I called. I want to say it was the Darnell Savage pick.
And even that had its moments where it looked like it was a genius pick. Like the first 2 years, we thought, like, damn, they did it again. But that's just the unfortunate truth. You know, it's everyone wants to say, why isn't it all? It's not no brainer because you're projecting guys to another level, and that's the magic of it. And that's how you end up with that guy isn't rated by the consensus as a top 50 player. Well, Green Bay thinks this guy is, and the most telling one is Clay, where it's like, who honestly had Clay Matthews as a first round pick in 2009? I was shocked. I liked him because I was just like, cool. Like, I saw that guy play. He made plays against Ohio State. That's a win for me, kind of thing. But at the same time, I remember it was like, oh, his 2 USC teammates, Maulunga and I can't think of the
Cushing's.
Cushing. Thank you. Yeah, they're going to be the way better pros, and you know, Matthews, he'll you know, he might be a good player, but he'll be a rotational player. You know, like all that kind of stuff. And look who almost had the Hall of Fame career out of the 3 of them. So, you know, that's where it, like you said, it's an inexact science, but that's just how these things work. Is teams have their boards. Yes, no teams is going to overlap because every team has different thresholds, different needs, and everyone's going to scout players differently. And within that, I guarantee you that if teams, and obviously not in like 2020 hindsight audit type style, but if you just Men in Black, you know, neuralizer wipe the scout, he would scout a guy differently, you know, 9 times out of 10 every time they watch him, because maybe one time they're looking for, you know, it's the whole thing like with how we ended up with Amari Rodgers and Jaden Reed is like, we're so stuck on finding a slot receiver that we pass up on some out, you know, perimeter receivers.
Right.
But, you know, and so it's like, if you go in, you neuralize the guy and you tell him, nah, go for outside receivers. It's like, okay, we're taking a different prospect over Amari Rodgers because we're not pigeonholing ourselves into getting only a slot guy kind of thing. So that's where, and it's all about like, this guy does these things and we think he can do a lot better as a pro. So fast forward to say, we're going to find out a lot about where this Packers front office is at this offseason. But, you know, I don't want to say there's pressure because really you shouldn't be relying on a draft class to make or break your season. But there is importance on this class contributing early like the last 2 have done, because this team, like I said, it has a couple rough spots on the roster, but there's a lot of positions where some depth would go a long way to helping them out. So,
well, and that's why I say you don't draft. You don't expect guys to come in and be day one stars right off the bat, but you also don't draft in certain rounds to be just backups.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to take a first round pick just for him. I mean, in rare occasions, obviously in the quarterback position, you're not always going to get that shot. They're either going to start day one or they're going to set like Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers for 3 years. You're not going to have one way or the other. But, in positions like running back and wide receiver and all that, you can bring them along slowly, but they still got to see the field and have plays. Otherwise, it's a waste of pick. The whole community is going to think of it as a waste of pick because they're just sitting there doing nothing. You're not going to leave them inactive. You're not going to leave them, off the roster. You're not going to cut them at the end of training camp. You're not going to do any of that stuff because you spent that draft capital on them. So, but then when you get into like rounds 5 through 7, that's where a lot of the so-called talking head experts will say that's your money rounds because that's where you find your gems and your diamonds in the rough and stuff like that
Yeah.
they, for whatever reason, but they can come in day one and be a starter.
Yeah, exactly. That's where you start to just get we just want football players or give me all the athletes and I'll teach them to football kind of picks. So
right.
Without further ado, let's get it on. Joe, we just spent like half an hour going in circles about what we would or wouldn't do with the first pick. How do you want it? So like what I've got is like I've got 3 directions they could go with the pick, and then I've just got a player in mind where I'm like, if he's there, that's the guy I would take kind of thing. But did you just have sort of a singular direction you went in, or is it kind of open to interpretation on your end as well?
Well, in my old ways, I used to do like alternative picks. I would have my main guy, but I would have like an alternate. So I was doing 2 mocks in one. This year, I had such a hard time trying to decide who was going to go where that I just went straight through one guy. It's pretty obvious the way I went with them. I do have explanations on the most part for them, but I went straight through one player, one spot, and I did have to use like NFL.com's ratings of where some of these guys would go in the draft, just because I always say that I'm not good at picking, saying, oh, well, this prospect is so good that he's going to be a first round pick. I can't do that. I'm not good at that. Maybe someday, but not today. So we can just start with just go, all right, this is our first round guy, second, and so on through.
Sounds good.
And then we can throw an explanation into it if we need to.
Lead us off, fearless leader.
Well, this one is kind of an obvious thing because I've talked it up a lot, and it's not what everybody's going to be thinking it is, even though my alternative pick would be the one that is the most obvious out of them all. But I did go Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. I feel like there's 2 things that the Packers could go round 1 that would not surprise me one bit. I would probably be on board with it 100%. And that's cornerback and edge. We've talked a lot of it over the course of the offseason. Cornerback is kind of an iffy thing. I know we have Jair. I know we have Carrington. Stokes should be coming back, but we don't know what we have in there. Corey Ballantyne really played above what anybody expected last year. So I don't see him being I'm not going to say he's going to revert back to this horrible player, but I don't think he's a superstar by any means. Keyshawn is there, and they keep saying that that Halfley is in love with him and has a plan for him. But I think they need another big time corner.
Especially especially because like you said, Keyshawn, he's a nice option, but you would like someone to take that role from him. You don't know what you have in Eric Stokes, and at any moment, both Ballantyne and Valentine could respectively turn back into the reasons why they're undrafted or a 7th round pick. And until they have a longer track record, you just don't know. So you can't count on them being the best, the best versions of themselves, because the one thing that's true about this league is this league adjusts back to you, and it can make a lot of good players look bad real fast. So, yeah.
Right. So yeah, Kool-Aid is the guy that I went with in round one, just because, obviously he's got the chops from Alabama. Him and Arnold were probably the best duo in college football this year. And I know Arnold's a little bit more the guy that is the press corner, but I think Kool-Aid's got the ability to do it. He's got the athletic ability to do it. So pair him with Jair. And obviously, if Carrington hits and Stokes comes back healthy and looks like year one again, you're not going to
Great.
have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. You're not going to have to rely on a rookie and Kool-Aid being your number two guy. You can bring him along slowly in case, because this is Stokes's
Third year now.
third year.
So
No, he's only got
fourth year. Sorry, fourth year.
Yeah, I was going to say it's pretty close, because
Yeah,
I don't
fourth.
know if they'll pick up his fifth year option or not. So there's
Yeah,
a
they
shot
got to
he's
make
not
that
even on the.
They've got to make that call June or July or something like that is the deadline, or it might be May or June is the deadline. So
I think it's right after the draft at some point.
Yeah. I think you're right. But yeah, so a lot of answers to be had at that position. That's a really good one. I went at your other. So the way I broke it down is I've got, at least for the early rounds, is guy I would just run the card up if he's there. Guy I think they'll take, and just absolute off the wall pick. So the guy I would take if he's there is Jared Verse. To kind of go to the other side of the equation that you're talking about. They need another edge this year. Doesn't have to be a first round guy, but just kind of like the Lucas pick last year, is if there's a really talented athletic edge prospect, they're gonna take him in the first round, especially because at this point you have three guys. You have Rashawn, you have Preston, and you have Lucas. Because Enigbare, he's on IR, probably going to start the season on PUP. You don't know, he got hurt in January. You don't know where he's going to be by the time, his PUP assignment is up, where he's eligible to return in the regular season. And then after that, you've got just guys who are like, they're preseason fun guys, but none of them have proven anything against, actual NFL talent. I know that
I would probably
know
throw
that everyone
Colby Wooden in there.
Yeah. But that's someone we haven't seen him
size.
play that position yet. So that's my run the card up guy if he's there. I think Verse does a lot of things. He's also a little bit different of a pass rusher than what we have in the room. He's a little more like Preston, actually, where he's not like your true edge bender like a KGB or Brian Burns, so to speak. But like Preston, he'll win with power, but he can also turn the corner and almost catch you by surprise in that sense. So he's my guy if he's there. The guy that I think they might pick is Guyton from Oklahoma. And so my whole thing with that is kind of like I was alluding to, is Oklahoma does a lot of the stretch runs that Green Bay does. And the added kind of a jokingly that I say about Guyton is he technically was Oklahoma's blindside blocker because their quarterback was a lefty, even though he played right tackle the last few years. And also, we're so far out of the era where your left tackle is the pass blocker and your right tackle is the run blocker. That's of yesteryear of 15 years ago at this point. So he's a guy that fits the dirty word, the thresholds, but you see him move, you see him block on the move. He plays with good knee bend, and he can protect the edge using his length and athleticism. So I really like him as a prospect if they do. And like you said, it's not a must that they go O-line, but he's a guy I could see them taking as offensive tackle if they just sit there and no one kind of falls through the cracks. And then I think you were kind of going here, but my off-the-wall one is the one we discussed when Shavink was on the show, is Chop Robinson. And he's announced, when they announced the pick, they announced him Chop Robinson, linebacker. And it's a big projection, but like I said, that's the only way I would be okay with taking him there, because
well, and then like I said, if you use his RAS as a linebacker, it's better than when he's put in as an edge rusher.
But it's that whole it's similar to what we were talking about Barton, where it's is this guy ever gonna play enough snaps at the position you draft him at to justify him being a first round pick. Or if he's only a sub package player, he's got to somehow average a dozen sacks every season to, that's, and everyone's like, oh, it's not all about the stats and stuff. But it's like, if he's only playing 30%, maybe even 40% of the snaps, the season, he's got to produce at an insane rate to make the pick worth it. Whereas if he's at linebacker, you've got to get Parsons out of this pick. But that's where I do think Chop is good enough to become that guy. And obviously, as a rookie, you let him rush sub package. But every once in a while, you're like, let's drop him into a zone and try and throw the other team off, kind of thing. You give him a defined role as a rookie, but you give him enough little wrinkles in there that you're like, okay, like, yeah, we had him play in reverse a couple times. We had him defend the run from an off-ball linebacker spot, and we liked where that was trending as the season goes on. So that's the direction where I'm like, that's where that pick would make sense for Green Bay. But
actually, he would be my rush the card up to the. But my alternative pick would have been Cooper. I mean,
the one thing, and like you said, there's a chance he could have a Josh Jackson fall. But I think what helps Cooper is I do think he would be a good safety in the NFL. Whereas with Jackson, every Iowa fan was like, he doesn't tackle, he can't play safety, kind of thing. Whereas DeJean, it's like, I mean, I know it was for like in a weird like Frankenstein role kind of thing, but we did see him play linebacker, and he played it like as much as like a guy only practiced for a week to play it. He played it well and stuff. So like,
well, and the thing is it's not just to compare him to Josh Jackson in a lot of ways, because he's more athletic than what Josh Jackson was.
Right.
Iowa actually played him in certain spots on offense, and he succeeded. They were never going to do that with Josh Jackson. If they've been showing some of Cooper's basketball highlights. This kid at 6 foot is dunking. That's athletic.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. So,
and that's why I said their two-sport athlete too. So
right, and that's why I also said that I can see him also being more successful than Josh was at corner. I think he could play both corner and safety in the league. He's probably going to be a better safety than a corner, but I think he's going to look more like Micah did, where he was serviceable as a corner, but he was more productive as a safety.
Like I said, that's where DeJean has more. I don't think he's the perfect pick like some people are saying he would be, but I think he has a better chance of becoming a good player because he can do more things and not just do them to survive. I think he can do them well. Whereas Jackson, it was like, that guy's got to play outside corner, and like he doesn't have another role. Like we saw Green Bay try to play him in the slot. They tried to play him at safety, and it just didn't work. So yeah, I think that DeJean, there's a chance. There's a chance because Green Bay will be like, we're going to try him in a couple different spots. We'll try him on the outside. We'll try him in the slot, but we think he can be at least a slot or a safety kind of thing. But we're going to try him at different spots because we want to, get him on the field as much as we can. But it's not like this guy can only play one position and he can't play that position in the NFL. So that's where I think, as much as I wouldn't love the pick, the one thing I'll say before we move on is, what makes this draft difficult too is you got a new defensive coordinator who has a really, not a funky scheme, but it's just so night and day from and he's a way more imaginative mind. From everything you read or hear about Hafley is like, this dude is a mad scientist. He's going to try different things. Yes, single high with man concepts is his thing, but he'll throw random stuff out there to, he'll throw curveballs at the offense. And that's where you kind of wonder, like, that's where the chop angle, the chop to linebacker, the Cooper to safety and nickel, all those kind of things is it's like, okay, like, that was the whole thing, is just like Capers wasn't putting Hyde at safety 100% of the time, or Pettin wasn't using this guy, or our boy Joe Barry wasn't, he was asleep at the wheel the whole time anyway. But, Hafley, it's like, he's gonna open new doors for different guys, even the guys that are on the roster. It's not a solid rumor, but it's like is Preston going to play down linemen all the time? Or, there's these different questions up in the air of like, what is this defense actually going to look like? So it potentially opens more doors for Green Bay to do different maneuverings in the draft. But yeah, I think that's where we're at with the first round. Second round, I'll go first. I know we have 2 picks to go, but just for 41, I think this is if he's there, I'm running the card up for Chris Jenkins. I think they need one more interior defensive lineman who can step in, like you said, not start, because he's not starting, especially because they're only playing 2 D tackles now. He's not beating out Kenny, TJ Slayton for the, if they're in a run stopping front, or even like Wyatt or Brooks to like, because those guys have proven like we can rush the passer against NFL talent. But Jenkins fits that role, like we kind of discussed, where I think they need one more guy who's both, maybe even a little more of a run stopper than a pass rusher, because they've got guys that they're like, this guy can win a one-on-one block on the interior and can rush the passer, but they're a little thin on options to stop the run on the interior. And I think Jenkins, he's a freak athletically. He comes from good pedigree. Both his uncle's a Super Bowl champion and was not just a tag along like Cullen. People were like, we never should have let him go in free agency the year after the Super Bowl. His dad was just an all-pro nose tackle. The dude knows how to football. He was a key part on Michigan's success the last 3 years. And I think that his game is going to translate really well. So he's the guy. If he's there at 41, I'm definitely taking him. Another option is, if he's there, is Brian Thomas. And I know a lot of people have gone back and forth on like, they don't need another receiver. They don't, and my point to that, and I've said it from last year, is you've got to take receiver. And this is where Thompson kind of screwed up, is that he would take receivers where you're like, we drafted Jordy Nelson, but we've got a 5 deep wide receiver room that was just absolute on fire last season, that we could, no one could run out 5 receivers on another team kind of thing. We draft Jordy Nelson with our first pick in 2008. And even Devontae Adams, it's like, well, we've got Jordy and we've got Cobb. Like, do we, there's other things we need over a wide receiver. And then Thompson got so focused on trying to fix his defense that he stopped doing that. And then we run into the situation where after 2021, it's like, oh shit, Tay wants out. Marquez left in free agency, and we're left with Lazard and who kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of what's on this roster, we don't know if Christian Watson can stay healthy for a whole season. We don't know if Romeo Doubs is better as a complementary player than as a true like wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Wicks, a lot of us think that he could be the next big dude at wide receiver, but he still could just be a 5th round pick. And, Melton is a great story. Heath is a great story, but they're still undrafted free agents who, they've had flashes, but at any moment it's like, oh, like that's why he was undrafted kind of thing. So I think that adding another big time receiver who, if they all hit, then great, because you can't pay all of them, but also it means that you're just giving more weapons to this offense to utilize, and help, Love just take this team to the next level. And that's where I think Thomas is like, and also Thomas overlaps a lot of the stuff that Watson does, where it's like you have another tall, rangy, deep threat. So that's where I would take Thomas in that role. And then my kind of zany one is Cam Kinchins. And the reason it's zany is because his combine was so bad. But he's a guy before the combine that I thought was good enough to be the pick at 25. And I think he's going to be one of the ultimate, is he the guy you saw on film, or are you going to let what is just a terrible like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He tested horribly at the combine, but are you going to trust the guy who looked like a much better athlete on film, or are you going to be scared off by the numbers? And that's why he's my zany pick, because I'm going to trust what I saw from his, his 3 years as a starter on film over, he had a bad combine, but I'm going to trust what I've got on film of him, that he's going to be a solid pro. So that's my zany guy. And he would fit in well with whichever. And that's the thing too, is like, people are like, oh, well, the Packers got their center field safety in McKinney, so they're going to look there. That opens them up more to like Cole Bishop or the other box guys. But I'm like, you got to have a backup. Like, what if McKinney rolls his ankle in the first game or something like that? That's you know that's long been one of the problems with Green Bay is their attitude is like, well, we've got the guy, so we're good there. But it's like, not saying you have to have like, there's no possible way to have backup like Pro Bowl level options, but it's like you got to have someone that you're confident will be able to at least hold his water if you put him in the game, other than like, oh, we don't have another center field safety on the roster. Now what? And so that's where I'm kind of like, if you trust you've got a guy that is going to be able to play that type of safety, go get him, because you've got to have, that's the kind of waiting in the wing options where, if it all pans out, great, you've got more guys you're trying to find roles to play. But what if the draft pick ends up being better than McKinney? Well, like, that opens up options in a couple years and stuff. So that's where that pick is at for me.
I think Thomas would be my run the card up to the podium, because I have a feeling he's not going to drop to the second round. I've got this feeling that he's going to get taken in the first round, because I think he's on par to the first round receivers.
The ultimate irony is that if Green Bay trades out, he might be the guy that gets picked with that pick. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, but my guy, this is where I would start going offensive line. And I've been on this guy since the day I watched him. He fits the Packers, thresholds, but then again, he doesn't, because I don't think he's ever going to play tackle in the league. But I think he could play the interior a line role, and that's Christian Haynes out of UConn. And I love the guy. He's got the good size, he got good everything, good testing. Obviously he's coming from a smallish type of school, but the Packers tend to like that out of players that have, they have high ability, high scores, and small school. He screams Packer to me. So that Christian Haynes is my guy. If they draft him, I would be over the moon for it.
You want to go with the second? You want to go first on the second round pick? Second round pick?
Yeah, because this is I double dip into the offensive lineman area, and I went Kingsley Suamate out of BYU, and I just screwed up his name, so I know I'm not going to call it out on draft night. But again, he's just screams Packer to me. I really think, and I think he could be the swing tackle type thing. But if the plan is to move Zach Tom into center, I think Kingsley could be that guy that takes over the right tackle spot. I still believe in Rasheed Walker. I think he's got the ability. He really came in, so I think he's really got that left tackle locked down. But I'm not against bringing in somebody who could take over if something happens. And so Kingsley is my guy. I would say that if I did have to take an alternative, it's going to be one of the inside linebacker guys, whether it's Cooper or Peyton Wilson. I would be more comfortable taking Wilson at this spot. I don't think Cooper will be at this spot in the second round. Wilson, I know, is highly athletic, but he's got a lot of things he's got to polish up before he's going to be an NFL linebacker. But he fits more what the Packers would look for in the high athletic freak type things. So, but no, like I said, I double dip in the OT, and Kingsley's it.
So my run the card up, I would be, I guess technically, if we're going by my three tiers, I would be double dipping at edge, but mine at 58 would be Marshawn Nealon. Kind of same like you're saying with some of your guys. I don't think he'll necessarily be there, but that's also why, like, if he is there at 58, I'm like, shit.
And disclaimer, I honestly thought of putting him as my first round pick, because I think the Packers are really high on him.
Yep.
And he's the only one so far in the edge class that I think fully fits everything the Packers look for in an edge.
He really does.
And I really, really wanted to put him in the first, but It would not surprise me if it happens. I'll just say that. It would not surprise me one bit if Nealon is the Packers' first round pick come Thursday night.
It would be a lot, obviously 12 picks later, but it would be a lot like Lucas last year, where Mafia and I were kind of laughing and we were just like, of course they picked him because uber athletic, long power rusher. Yeah, that's Goots type to a T, and they needed one. Like, they absolutely needed one last year. So yeah, like I said, it's not as big of a screaming need because you do have 3 guys, but it seems like they want to be able to rotate 2 times, and that's why I've got them. They because there's no Inigbare this year, probably. That's why I've got them looking for another one. My sit there and take him guy is Patrick Paul, the tackle from Houston. He's kind of in that range where, we talked about him during the O-line, where our O-line talk, where, he's not a guy you're taking round 1 or even at 41, because he does have some technique things to work out. But from a raw athletic side, he's a more, like, the way I comp him is he is Yosh, but a more polished product coming out of college kind of thing, where it's a little easier to translate him. And that's why you're more comfortable taking him as a draft pick instead of like, oh, like, no one likes how he plays right now, so you can get him as an undrafted guy, how we got Yosh, after, what was it, 2019, the 2019 draft or whatever. So that's Paul is my, at 58, my take him where he is. And then my kind of off the wall one is also an inside linebacker, but it's a homer pick, but I think he's going to be a really good pro, and it's Junior Colson, because I think he, and like, Wilson and Cooper get a lot of the praise right now, but I think that where Colson is, and it's because he didn't test at the combine, but you watch him on film, he's got sideline to sideline range, he diagnoses and fires against the run, and no, he didn't have the greatest production against the pass, but he's a good blitzer, and he's a good tackler. And that's the thing, is like, you can let Quay be aggressive, let him shoot gaps, let him do all the things, if you have a guy like Colson who's just going to clean up everything behind him. And that's what Colson was really good at. And I don't say that to make it sound like he's limited in terms of being a playmaker, because we saw plays where on the chances, but that was Michigan's thing, is like, every game was to prepare for Ohio State, where it's like, we're going to make you take underneath throws. It was almost like a light version of Iowa, where it's like, we're just going to keep everything in front of us and make the tackle. And Colson was a big reason they were able to do that. They're able to play light in the box because he had the ability to get outside of linemen pulling and trying to hook him inside on outside run plays. And I just think that he would pair really nicely with how they have with Quay, and how they're probably going to want their linebackers to play. So Colson would be my second round pick in that area. But so we'll go to 88. 88, my run the card up guy is Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. And he gives you the opportunity, and like, it's great that Musgrave and Kraft in their own ways look to be ascending at the end of the season. Kraft, it took him the longer time to ramp up, but we saw him gain a lot of trust as both a blocker and as a receiver as the season went on. He really took advantage of when Musgrave was out with the spleen injury, or the lacerated kidney, that Kraft was able to step in and really make the most of those opportunities. That's what you'd love to see from him. And then with Musgrave, you saw the game-breaking ability play up. We all make the joke about the playoff game that he didn't fall down against the Cowboys on the long touchdown that he caught. But I do think that while that room is in good hands, you want to replace what Green Bay wanted DeGuara to be in the offense with a guy who is much more well-equipped to be what they want him to be, as the fullback, H-back, move tight end guy in this offense. And Sinnott is just oozing with athleticism, and I think he fits that role to a T. And so it would be a guy that it would be great if Green Bay could get him in round 3, is kind of in that sweet spot where I think he might be gone late round 2, but I would totally run the card up at 88 to get him. Guy that I think they'll just sit back and take if he's there is I know he's a little bit outside the threshold, mostly because of weight, but I think if Jackson Powers Johnson is somehow there in the 3rd round, that they might say, like, look, This is just a really good center. Yeah, the funny part to me is I've always wanted to have an O-line where your center is your biggest, like heaviest player. To me, it's just really funny. Just because usually your center is like your smallest O-lineman. And I think JPJ would be their heaviest lineman by like 5 or 10 pounds or something like that. But also he's just a really good player. And I think that if you're gonna, you third round is like, let's see if this guy can beat Myers out for the job. And we'll see we'll kind of see what happens. Or, you kind of cross train him and let him be ready to take over the reins going into 2025. And then my off the wall pick is another old lineman, another homer pick, but it would be Zach Zinner. And the reason it would be off the wall is Green Bay just doesn't take guard only prospects. And also he's coming off an injury, but Zinner just does everything that Green Bay, he gives them the ability to run outside zone. He gives them the ability to run interior gap and power runs. And he's just whip smart in pass protection. Be able to challenge Ryan for the starting job. And you just shore up, one of your potential question marks. So, but he's not a tackle, never really played tackle at Michigan. So that's where it's kind of an off the wall pick to take Zinter there. Plus, he didn't get the test at the combine because he broke his leg in the Ohio State game. But I think that you'd be getting a really good football player. Kind of be like, not the same because he's not as versatile, but it'd be kind of like the Philly drafting Lance Dickerson when he was coming off his ACL. So similar sort of value pick there. So who you got at 88?
Cole Bishop, the safety. This is where I'm going to go with safety. I'll be honest, I didn't watch him because I wasn't involved in the safety episode for us, but everything tells me that he's a Packer. Size, testing, what he can do, he would be the solid sidekick for Xavier. So that would probably be my guy to take right there, just because even though it is third round, and even though Tucker has seemed like he's broken that third round curse, I still don't like third round picks for the Packers. So it would kind of hurt, but hopefully, this is a new age and new thing where we can trust our third round picks. But yeah, the Packers have got to come out of this draft with a safety. It's sad, but it's true, because this isn't a good draft for safeties. So you got to take one now. I think because of the lack of depth for safety in the draft, he's probably going to go higher. But this is where NFL.com had him projected at, was third round. So,
and that's also what we were saying last year. Like we were like, the 2023 safety class sucks. They're all going to go early kind of thing. And I think Skinner was the first safety, and I don't think he went till like the third, like right around here in the draft, somewhere around here, or might have even been round 4 or something like that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go. But you're right. I do think that they need to, whoever their best guy is, they're going to try and come out of the draft with that.
So I don't really have any other alternatives here because I can't think of anything. So I'm just going to jump into round 4. And this one I'm kind of excited for, just because he's my Wookiee. Rook or Horro out of Clemson, defensive tackle. Again, Packers are definitely going to come out of this draft with a defensive tackle. Rook has size. He's probably a little underweight, but I think with his frame, he can. I think he's only underweight by like 3 pounds. So I think with his frame, he can afford to put on 3 more pounds and not lose anything. And like I said, he's a Wookiee, and I got to have a Wookiee on my side.
So I think I realized I missed my second third round pick. So one of these two, I think
we only have 1 third round pick.
No, we have 2. Remember the Buffalo one from the Rasul pick, the Rasul trade.
Oh, well, then I don't have an extra. Well, yeah, I guess I do. It would be Theo. What's his name? Theo out of Penn State.
Johnson, right?
Yep. Then I'd have my Sasquatch and my Wookiee.
kind of similar to me picking Sinnott. I think Johnson, yeah, he's kind of a similar player in that where I think Sinnott was more the target in Kansas State's offense, whereas Johnson, it was like, who are they throwing to in Penn State's offense? But I thought he was always a guy
Penn
where like,
State doesn't always use their tight ends worthwhile.
no,
They're all out of place and everything. But for as athletic as he is, he's also 6'6", and who is an opposing defense going to put against him to block him? So, yeah, if I had to pick another third, then it would be him.
Yeah, my second, third round pick was gonna be Amagaji, the Yale tackle. We saw that Green Bay brought him in for an official visit. I do think that was to test, to kind of check up where he is in his rehab, see how he's doing. You can do medicals on the official visit, and just kind of get another interview with him. So he would be my guy. Like if they're going to take another a flyer old tackle, he would be a good one to take in the third round, the end of the third round. And then, excuse me, fourth round, another guy who I'm not sure where he's going to go because he might miss part of the season, Jonathan Brooks. If he's still there in the fourth round, it's just like, yeah, I don't care that he's probably, I don't, everyone's like, oh, but people come back from ACLs, blah, blah, blah. I'm just taking the stance that he's not coming back for at least the first half of the season and he won't be himself till 2025. But round 4, if he's there, hell yeah. Like we saw the upside of what Brooks is as a running back, and you're taking the chance that he's going to bounce back from an ACL. And if he doesn't, like that sucks, but it's a day 3 pick. And it's
ACLs
not as much of a hurt.
like they used to be.
Yeah.
Before you had to worry so much about somebody having an ACL injury, but anymore it's like an everyday injury that, outside of what happened with Bakhtiari, you're not having as much concern with it.
If it's just the ACL, it's not anywhere near the horror that it used to be. It doesn't come with that same stigma anymore. No, totally agree with you. But yeah, that's why he would be my fourth round guy. Let's see. So only one fourth round pick. Fifth round, who you got, Joe?
Ray Davis, running back out of Kentucky. Packer. I mean, obviously Brooks would be the guy that I would take, but I think he's going to be gone before the Packers get on the clock. And
I think someone is going to some team is going to be like, we're either not good or we have a random amount of day 2 picks that we're just going to, and that's where Green Bay could take him. He could have been one of our off the wall picks because Goot could say, this guy is a potential first round pick, but I've got 4 day 2 picks, so I can take him here. And so, some people do the like, that's a bad use of resources, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, if my other second round or my other third round pick contributes, and this guy is a first round worthy pick from the rest of his, the rest of his contract, it's like, yeah, that's a freaking good use of resources. So yeah, totally agree. Like 4 is where I'm just like, I'm shoving people out of the way because I'm like, wait, like you're doing the double take when you see his name on the ticker on ESPN or NFL Network when it's like, Bucky Brooks or Daniel Jeremiah's top remaining players. You're like, oh wait, what? He's still there, kind of thing and stuff. So,
well, we're gonna change it here for a minute. Instead of Theo, even though I love you, Theo, because you'd be my Sasquatch, you would probably Brooks would probably be my other third round because I think Packers are going to take a couple of running backs.
Yeah.
So yeah, he probably fit in there. But my guy right now in the 5th round would be Ray Davis because I think he'd fill the Aaron Jones role. Smaller, bulky. He's a little bit bulkier than what Aaron Jones was, so I think he can handle it a little bit more. If he wasn't going to be 25 years old, I think he would be a higher draft pick. But I also think he has still a little bit more tread left on him than what a normal 24 or 25-year-old would have. So I think, like I said, he's going to be that Aaron Jones type of player because of his size. He's not going to be somebody that you want to rely on as your every down back, but he's the guy that you're going to give to him because you know he's going to get you the yards you need at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I'm still not sold on AJ Dillon. Josh Jacobs is, he's going to be obviously the lead back. I have high hopes for him, but we all know how the contracts are. AJ Dillon's on a 1-year contract. Josh
That
Jacobs
doesn't,
is,
and then Dylan's is like they could cut him tomorrow. They could cut him in a few months, and it would do nothing to their cap
yeah.
situation. So yeah,
Well, and Josh Jacobs is in the same way where he has one guaranteed year, and then the next years are just like team options if
yeah.
they want to hang on to him. So, and I like Emmanuel Wilson, but we don't know what's there. So it's better to double up on the running back position. So I'm going to go Ray Davis out of Kentucky.
As much as there's that adage of like you can find running backs anywhere, Green Bay struggled to do that overall. So yeah, it's time for them to kind of double down on the position again. So I agree with you there.
And even if they do take Brooks at 3, this still allows him to
Yep.
recuperate from injury by allowing Davis to go in.
Yeah. And then my round 5 guy, this is where I think they would overlook his size, his height mainly, Mike Sainristil. And I think he's the kind of nickel that you're looking for to
fucking you homer.
Absolutely. Hey, at least I'm honest about it,
I fully admit it, but I at least leave the bias out of it, and I don't have him throughout my mock draft.
I always want to cheer for more Michigan guys. But no, honestly, I think Sainristil would be a really good pick here at this point because in the 5th round, you're getting a guy who,
and it's not just because of Michigan, and I'll let you go with your stuff, but the stuff that I did see on him, I wasn't keen on. I didn't think he could probably prove me wrong, but I don't think he's going to have quite the success in the NFL like he did at Michigan.
And that's where I have him all the way down at round 5 because if I do think he's getting picked earlier than this, but this is where Goot would kind of reconcile like his size, the fact that he doesn't meet size thresholds with his on-ball production and his athletic testing. But he's not the biggest guy, but he sticks his nose in run defense and he'll get guys down when he's tackling in coverage. Got really good ball skills, has the ability to mirror in man, and can also like kind of do like robber drops in zones. So just an all-around really good football player, and I'm willing to take that swing in the 5th round. Go.
Well, I already did my 5th round, Ray Davis.
So no, I'm saying cut it down. Go.
Well, no, I did. I really,
yeah.
I didn't see much there. His size is obviously going to be a big factor on things. I mean, you do have some successful DBs in the league that are 5'9", but they're not prevalent, especially now that a lot of your wide receivers are getting to be 4'4", 40s, but they're also 6'3", 6'4" type guys. So I really think he's going to struggle there. Like I told Westendorf on our episode for defensive backs, there were times when I would flip on what I'd see out of him, and it was just like, what, this guy is nothing. You'd see one like flash play out of him, and the rest of it was like he's getting his ass beat, because the receiver's bigger than him and he's not able to overcome it. And so I don't think the Packers, he'd have to be like Jair level talent for the Packers to drop their thresholds that far, even as a 5th round pick.
Fair enough. All right, 6th round, we got 2 picks. Who you got?
Well, the first one I kind of battered around a lot with, because there's one that I really want to take, but I don't think he's going to be there in the 6th round. So I went with the other one that is probably a similar type player, and that's Jamari Thrash out of Louisville. There was I'm in the same boat that you are. I've said for the longest time that the Packers just need to keep adding to the cupboard so they're not in a situation where they have nobody there and Jordan Love is throwing to, the beer boy in the stands. And so keep bringing them in. I like Melton, but and I really like Heath, but like you said, you can't not take somebody just because you have them unless you don't think that they're going to be better. The guy that you're taking is going to be better than them. You're not going to take a guy just to take a guy. Thrash has a lot of ability to him. I've actually seen kind of rumors that he could go a lot higher than the 6th round. He could even probably sneak into that 3rd or 2nd round range. I don't know. I've also seen him being mentioned as a big sleeper for this year's draft. If you can get him in the 6th, go for it.
And your second one?
Okay, so this is where I had to
scrape the bottom of the barrel.
No, it wasn't where I scraped the bottom of the barrel, but see, my original thought was with the 1st round is if we took Chop Robinson, we would move him into that linebacker position and he wouldn't be an edge anymore. Well, then going through the rest of the draft, I wasn't finding guys that would fit that mold like a Chop. 6th round, I did find a guy that would be close, would be in a similar boat. He's not going to give you full athletic like Chop, but he's going to give you a kind of athletic, and that's Javonte Jean-Baptiste out of Notre Dame. He's listed as an edge, but again, if you put his RAS into the calculator as a linebacker, he's a better linebacker prospect than he is an edge prospect. He matches a lot of the things you look at as a linebacker. So the big question is, can he drop into coverage? I think he has the ability to if he needs to. But 6th round, you're taking a project. Obviously, McDuffie and Quay are going to be your day one starters right now, unless they make a trade or pick up somebody else. But, he's the guy that I'm going to go to.
Yeah. And honestly, like, that's fine. We've seen Green Bay try to make that conversion with guys in like the 5th, 6th round, Nate Palmer, Bradford. They have, Palmer kind of worked sometimes. Bradford didn't, they were just trying to find a home for him at that point. Papinga was kind of in this range too, and he was an okay Sam linebacker for them. But I think you're right that you're kind of in that range where if you don't absolutely love an athlete at another position, just take a flyer and see if you can turn someone into a better player. So I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. And yeah, Baptiste has he's like a 240-pound edge, and that's just not going to really hold up at the NFL level.
Right.
My first 6th round pick is actually your guy, Logan Lee. I think he would be a decent shot. If they haven't addressed interior D line, you kind of, not to throw an over ambitious label on him, but this is kind of like your Aaron Campman flyer at this point in the draft. And it's like, and Mike Wall jokes about it all the time. Is like, I don't like the helmet scout, but there's something about those Iowa boys. They all, you played under like the same coaching for, decades at this point, but they all come out able to play out of a 4-point stance. You can move them all over the line. They're stout. They're strong. They play with good technique. And I think Lee is a guy that he's not going to be a superstar probably, but he can just be a good rotational player. And that's what Green Bay needs is they need guys they can trust to eat up like 5 to 15 snaps a game. And I know that doesn't sound a lot, but on average, you're playing 60 snaps on either side of the ball. So, that's up to a quarter of the snaps. And you want guys that you're like, okay, at worst, he's not getting his ass kicked down the field kind of thing. Like he's able to hold his ground and maybe throw in a splash play here and there. And I do think Lee has some upside. Get him into an NFL strength and conditioning program and see what you got there. And then my second 6th round pick, it would be Joe Milton if he's still there. And that's just your absolute of what's it called? Groot and LaFleur just screwing around and saying like, they do seem to have a type where it's taller, big-armed quarterbacks with questionable accuracy because that was Love. They were supposedly in on shoot, what's the guy's name? The one from Missouri that he's
Drew Lock.
Drew Lock, yeah, and then Kaiser, who are all kind of the same, their same mold, all 6'4" and above with big arms. Are they going to hit the side of the barn? That was sort of the question of them coming out of college. And I think at this point, as much as they like Clifford in that role, maybe they do want to see if they can get a guy with a little higher upside in that backup role. And Milton could go early because someone's like, I can get the best out of that guy. I can fix him. Or he could go down here in like mid to late day 3 because it's like, yeah, he's still the guy he was at Michigan in 2020. It's just that he had better receivers around him in Tennessee's
offense. That figures
offense.
Why you took him, because this is just a roundabout way to get another Michigan guy on the...
No, but I'm hoping that they can Hasselbeck him and turn him into some kind of draft pick. So,
see, and that's like where I'm at too, where I think you treat the quarterback room like you do, like we've been talking about the wide receiver room. That way you're not having to rely on UDFAs as backups, like a Graham Harrell or a Joe Callahan or whatever. So I didn't take one in my mock, but I'd have no problems if they took one in this draft.
And so that's my 6th round. And then, Joe, let's close it out. Who are they taking with 245 and 255 in round 7?
Okay, so my first 7th rounder is Donovan Jennings out of South Florida. Again, I think he projects better as a guard than he does a tackle, but he's got the ability to do it all. They have brought him in as a visit, so they did do the research on him. Is he going to be here? I don't know. He could go sooner. He could go later. I really don't know. Again, I went off a lot of NFL.com's projections on these guys. My second one is Logan Lee because they had him listed as a round 7 or a preferred UDFA. So I'd have no problems with him because size-wise, he's basically Lucas Van Ness. Talent-wise, he's probably going to be a better Dean Lowry. And I know you don't want to put a Dean Lowry comp on anybody, but he's going to be a better version of it, where he's going to be able to rotate in. He's going to be able to eat blocks, the occasional sack. He's going to be able to play the run a little bit better. But
just Dean Lowry on his rookie contract. That's all.
Right. Or every other year, Dean Lowry.
Yeah. Everyone sneezes at it now, but everyone was like, that was a damn good pick because he's a round 4 guy that you're like, oh, he has starter upside and can get you a handful of sacks every year kind of thing. So yeah, that's why I like Lee too. Like I said, this is the point of the draft where, like I said, you're getting the best athletes you can and seeing if you can teach them the football, or you're just getting the best football guys who can come in and, like I said, they're not gonna light your roster. They're not gonna set your expectations on fire or anything like that. But you're gonna get quality snaps out of them when they're in the game. You can trust, they're trustable guys and stuff. And I think Lee falls into that category very well too. So my round 7, rounding it out. So first one, 245, I got Delmar Glaze, the tackle out of Maryland. I feel like he's a guy that's kind of fallen down. There's a lot of other guys who have kind of risen up in the the pre-draft process, and I feel like Glaze is a guy that was kind of talked up before but has sort of fallen through the cracks a little bit as it's gone on, and he's just kind of another athletic upside offensive tackle. See what you got, and at this point it's see if you get another Rasheed Walker, Yosh Nijman kind of reclamation project. But if he turns the way of Andrew Datko, it's oh well, it's a 7th round pick. We took the best guy, the best athlete, and it just didn't pan out. But if it does, it's haha, look at these geniuses kind of thing. And then my second one, I don't think he'd be there, but it'd be Elijah Jones. And that would be kind of a familiarity pick. And you kind of do see those from incoming, especially the college ones. Incoming coaches, you do see kind of a familiarity pick. And Jones is kind of a funky athlete. He's really explosive in terms of his jumping numbers. The long speed's a little off, but he is a taller corner, so it's kind of it'll be interesting to see how he fits into an NFL defense. But this is a guy who's, he's played in Hafley's system for a couple seasons, so he's a guy that, if it works out or if it doesn't work out, like I said, it's the last pick. The last pick in your draft class, but the upside is like he knows what he's doing. He knows this. He knows the ins and out of this defense well, and you're just really all at this point you're looking for. You're not looking for a starter. You're just looking for someone to, like we kind of said, test Valentine, make sure like they earn their spots, not just like they played good last year, they sucked this preseason, but they were good last year, so we're gonna give them another chance, kind of thing. Like those guys are all gonna earn their roster spots, and bringing in a guy with that kind of familiarity, there's some just innate promise to that. So that's how I've got it closing out. But
yeah, Elijah, I think the only reason he didn't go in my mock is because I think NFL.com has him projected to go higher, like a 4th round or 5th round
yeah,
or something like that.
he's kind of all over the place because I think ESPN is a little lower on him, and I've seen him. Yeah, and like we said, I've seen him on mock draft simulators go anywhere from like the 4th all the way to undrafted. So
Right.
it's he is more. He's not a for every defense kind of guy. He is a little bit more of a flavor of ice cream kind of guy. But that's why I think like Hafley is going to be a guy that's like, well, we're looking for a corner, and I can at least tell you this guy can play in my system, kind of thing. So
well, and like I said in
the picks. Yeah.
Like I said in the cornerback episode with Joey and Jacob, if we get to the 7th round and and he's still on the board and the Packers haven't taken him, then you have to wonder if he's actually a good player or not, because Hafley knows him. There is a need there. If they haven't already taken 2 or 3 other, corners already, if he's there and they don't take him, then there's a bigger question mark to him.
Yeah. So, and the basic trend that the two of us have covered is we expect them to fill a lot of holes, roster spots, or use a lot of draft picks to try and shore up their defensive back depth, both at safety and corner. Honestly, corner, they're probably looking for a starter more, because it kind of sounds like, and based on how they used him, it looks like they liked the way Johnson Jr. was tracking at the end of the season. Plus, you still got Rudy Ford, and I know it was a different system, but I think Ford is a guy that you can sign tomorrow or in another month, and he'll still come at the same price, cheap, but you've seen him be productive, especially more of a box safety. And just buy more time for Johnson or for another rookie to kind of come along, so that you're not you're not relying on a 7th round pick from last year and a rookie from this year to solve all your problems. And a lot of answers at edge. I know that's a position, that and wide receiver, tight end to a lesser extent. Those are 3 positions where people are like, but look who we've drafted. But it's like, you still got spots at, whether it's, ironically, it's injury related at both edge and wide receiver. Edge, because we don't know when Inagbure is going to play this season. And at wide receiver, it's like, what is Watson? Is Watson going to stay healthy this season and we're going to see it? Or is he going to spend another season where he's just never healthy? His family is getting into Twitter battles with everyone because,
and like I said earlier, there have been those slight whispers that the Packers could use him as a trade bait, and if they do that, they've got to find somebody to replace him.
Yep. And his value when he's tradable will never be higher at this point, because it's like, everyone's like, but he's hurt. But I'm like, but he's still that mystery box, because it's like teams have seen him have 9 touchdowns in 5 weeks or whatever the hell it was as a rookie, and you saw like how he changed the offense this past season when he was fully healthy and on the field. And it's like, hamstrings are one where it's like they linger, but we've also seen guys be able to like overcome hamstring issues. So it's like his value will never be higher. But if he does stick in Green Bay and plays well, Green Bay is not trading him unless they can't, they get to 2 more years down 2 more off seasons and they can't extend him. And then it's like, okay, maybe his trade value will be higher then, kind of thing. But at least looking into like a 1-year window, his trade value will not be higher than it is right now, because if they try to trade him next offseason, it's because he's hurt again. And it's like, well, this guy's been hurt 3 years in a row and it's never going to happen. So, leave no stone unturned. And a lot of other positions, it's just a lot of they have some answers on, and linebacker's the other one that we think that they need to have answers coming out of this draft. O-line, it really just matters what they're fitting to do this season. Are they going to roll out is the only guy they're replacing Runyon at right guard, and they're just going to roll with the rest of the starting four, Walker, Jenkins, Myers, Ryan at right guard, and then Tom at right tackle. Then, maybe their O-line draft picks are, a little bit, they're not necessarily forcing a day 1, day 2 pick. They're kind of getting more, guys with upside like Amagaji or Paul, like if they slip to round 4, things like that. Glaze, like we said. Or if they take them early, that'll kind of signal, like you said, more answers to the test. So it remains to be seen how they want to approach it. And outside of that, it's just a lot of depth for this roster. And, some people are like, that's not a sexy pick and stuff, but the more talented the bottom of your roster is, the better your special teams are, the more freely you can play your starters on, you don't have to like worry about like, oh, Quay got hurt covering a kickoff or something like that. Or, someone got hurt like blocking for a punt and stuff. So it just opens up more opportunities for the starters to be on the field in their positions of need. But Joe, any last thoughts before we head on out on this one?
No, like I always say, this is a fun experiment to do prior to the draft because none of us know what's going to happen. I don't care if you have 100,000 followers or if you have 10 followers. You don't know anything better than anybody else. You can make guesses just like the rest of us. You can say you know what you're doing, but you don't because you don't work in the front office. You don't sit in the war room when this stuff's going on.
Yeah.
So this is always just a fun experiment to see where everybody's sitting at.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes it fun. But also, like you said, that's where can it be Saturday night or Sunday morning already at this point? So it's all over and we're just doing recap thoughts and pods and articles. But that's going to wrap it up. This is the end. Well, not the end, but this is the end of the 2024 pre-draft cycle for Ohana Packers Edition. Please give us a follow. Follow our Twitter account to be eligible for our giveaway drawings. We're coming up on a few of those. Remember, you have to be following the podcast itself on Twitter at Ohana_Packers. Joe and I are grateful if you're following us individually, but you're not eligible unless you're following the podcast. Check out the website, ohanapackers.org. We've got our blog posts. All the streams of our podcast episodes are up there. We've got
merch.
Buy our merch. Coffee, including
we have coffee. There's all kinds of merch on there. We got the my Brendan Derwinski inspired t-shirt, the Bohe Did It t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler. We've got Cheese Talk hats, t-shirts, tumblers, coffee, Ohana Packers, everything, hats, t-shirts. So go over there, support us. Every little bit helps. It helps us to produce more stuff and possibly get more things done. So yeah, merch.
Please give the podcast a follow on your favorite apps. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. Comments, positive, negative, in between. We love them all because we want to be producing the content you want to hear and see. Packers go in, again, 11 picks in this 2024 draft. We're going to see if Goot moves up or down, stays where he is. But I mean, last year, Goot traded back multiple times and he made all 14 picks that he ended up with. So more likelihood that he's not moving out of the draft or moving up, that he's moving back to just accrue more talent. But like we've said multiple times this podcast, that's the fun of it. For Joe, I'm Mike. We want to say go Pack, go, and aloha.